All right, we are live with our recording. To our audience, thank you all for joining us. This is the Recruiting Solutions Podcast, and I'm your host, James Welch, the founder and CEO of Recruiting Solutions. We took a little bit of a break for the holidays, so Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone. But we are back with a vengeance and ready to hit the ground running in 2026. And I'm honored and privileged to have with us today as our first great guest for the year, my friend and former coworker, Nelson Castillo. He is just retired after 32 years of service for our nation. A very busy man. He's already started a couple of businesses, and he is the author of this book, Bridge Builders, which we are going to discuss in depth today. So without further ado, Nelson, welcome to the Recruiting Solutions Podcast, my friend.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate you. Thank you for having me here. I am very honored to be here to discuss not just my book, but also a little bit of the book and something that really has inspired me to write as well to kind of complement that, sir.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, that's a good looking book you just had in your hand there. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely, sir.
Well, tell us, my friend. I briefly mentioned you've started a couple of businesses. You want to start off by telling us kind of what you've been up to since you retired and a little bit about your businesses. Is that okay?
Oh, yes, absolutely, sir. So after 32 years, I was 10 years in the active army. I was medically retired, and then I did 22 years with the recruiting services in Syracuse, Tampa, and then at the brigade in Huntsville, Alabama. I did 22 years as an education service specialist. So 32 years of services, sir, served for me to reach out to the community and connect them. And this is the reason why I wrote Bridge Builder. But since I've been retired, I have shifted my focus from a military perspective to just the same purpose, but now to connect everybody together. So writing Bridge Builders has allowed me to reflect on all the lessons that I learned over all of the decades that I have been with the government and the military. I started my consulting business first so that I can reach out and connect all, whether it's the military, the schools, the secondary school, just to kind of build the bridges and connect people together. But one thing that I always say is that we have to know what our passion is. And that is one of the things that I've always spoken to whenever I went to a high school or to a college as I was working as an education service specialist. You have to understand and know what your passion is. And one of my passions that I loved while I was in the recruiting services was my passion to travel, and that is where the other branch of my business comes in. I joined a travel agency because I see that travel inspires people to also venture out and enjoy themselves apart from their job. So I kind of took both of those branches and bridged them together, if you will. No pun intended.
That's awesome. And, you talk about passion, and I can vouch for that. I mean, working with you, I rarely saw someone more passionate and who brought more energy to their job than you did. No matter the circumstances, how worn out you were from traveling all over the southeastern United States, you always came to the table with passion and energy, and I appreciate that about you, Nelson.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you. I tell you, sir, that in our lives we are always encountering people that kind of makes you look at a life differently. And you were one of those persons. I loved your leadership, and I loved the direction that you took while you were there. And recruiting was definitely on top of your list there. And that is something that inspired me to write Bridge Builder. And I look back on our experience together and how I was able to get that and put it together in the book.
I appreciate that very much, my friend. And, it's funny. My passion was always recruiting and sales, and I built this business because of that. And I wrote my book, The Art of Military Recruiting, because I felt like I had something to give back to recruiters. I really kind of envisioned, if I came into recruiting day one, either as a non-commissioned officer or as an officer. What are some things I would need to know to help me be successful, right? So that's kind of how I framed my book. But when I read your book, I was thinking the exact same thing. I thought, if I was brand new to recruiting, this is the book that I would read, because it's going to teach me how to make all those connections that you have to have in recruiting. If you don't build connections and get to know people in the community and talk to educators and all those people that are going to assist you with your mission, you probably aren't going to be successful. And I think that's one thing that you really do well in this book is you talk about how to build those bridges and make those connections. And while it's great for recruiters, I would argue if you're in sales, if you're in any industry, this is the book you need to really understand, okay, how do I make these connections? How do I sustain them? How do I keep track of them? All those different things you covered. And quite frankly, I had never even thought, all my years in recruiting, I had never even thought about some of this stuff. So job well done with the book.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it
So,
was one.
my inspiration, sir, for again for writing Beach Builder is uh, actually was born out of the years that I have seen, especially the recruiters and how they went out into the community, and the most successful recruiters that went out into the community were those bridge builders that knew how to connect with the people out there. Now, uh, obviously, there are capable professionals out there, but some of them struggle with the networking part of it, and that's why they may not be as successful at those others that know how to connect with the people. During my time and all that I observed with the recruiters, and not just with recruiters, but as you know, being in the brigade, we were part of a 11 or 8 battalions that we oversaw, and I had the slice of education. And within my own little sphere of influence, I could see that some of the education service specialists, the more successful ones of those battalions, were the ones that actually went out and created the real relationships. Because and I'm sure that we're going to talk about this later, but there is a difference between going out, getting a business card, and just saying, "Hey, how you doing?" and "Nice to meet you." And then the other part is getting the business card, following up with that person, and creating a real relationship. That is really where the gold is at.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. And one thing, Nelson, I never understood, we had so many recruiters that had so much potential, but I don't know whether it was just they didn't want to, maybe they were shy or didn't think they needed to. But there's so many that just refuse to go out and make connections, even at their schools. I was surprised sometimes when I would travel to a school with a recruiter, and I'd always ask, hey, let's go meet the principal. And they didn't even know the principal. It's like, how do you not know the principal? That's like the head decision maker, or whatever the case may be, right? Why do you think that is? Why do you think there's a reluctance, whether it be recruiters or whomever, to go out and build those connections?
Um, what I experienced from that perspective, sir, it was that again, and I will look at the most successful recruiters. They will go into a school, but theirs was not to ask for things. Theirs was to literally care for that school. So one of the things, and it's actually written in the book, is to listen to the people that you are actually are connecting with. So if I'm connecting with someone and I'm not listening to what is it that they need, I am going to miss the boat, because that need is the need that I, as a person that wants to connect, I'm going to bring to them. So in the schools, for example, we have programs, or the military, the United States Army, they have programs that are geared specifically for schools, even colleges. And if a recruiter only goes to a school just to ask for a transcript or to ask to talk to a student, but don't really get to meet and understand what the need of that school is that school struggling academically? Are they struggling for people? I mean, there's just a myriad of things that a school may need and that a recruiting or even the recruiting station can assist the school with. And so that's how you create a relationship, a quid pro quo. It's not just give me, you have to be able to give back as well. And what I found out, the most effective one, obviously, is to give back, so that whenever you need something, you're able to also receive that.
Oh yeah.
And then the recruiters that are really not as successful are those recruiters that just go in, they believe that they are, whatever their needs are going to be met, not really understanding the battle rhythm of that school. In the military, there's always a battle rhythm, something that needs to happen, something that's happening either by seasons, by months, by weeks. And so in the school is the same way. There are times when students are testing, when there is conferences, when school is closed, whatever it may be. And sometimes a recruiter may go there thinking that, hey, my situation is high priority, so you have to take care of me. And that actually burns more bridges than to really know and understand what the battle rhythm of that school is. And you are only going to know that when you listen and connect with the administrators of that school.
Oh yeah. No, that's solid advice, and so true. I've seen it time and time again. And also, I've got a few questions, and I'll run through these. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. I can hear you.
So yeah, I'll skip around a little bit, but let's start off with this: is that we live in a digital world, and you mentioned this a little bit in your book. But is it okay to build connections digitally, or would you recommend doing it in person, or both?
Sir, both serve a good purpose. Obviously, we are all human beings, are always want to see and touch something or someone, not in a physical sense. But the most effective way to create a relationship is by seeing a person in physically. So, for example, I'll bring you back to when we used to do educators tours in the military. So many times, as you have probably seen on your 2 or 3 years that you were there, that we did those educators tours. Most of those educators that we brought to the educators tours, we have never met. You probably never met. So that was the physical relation that was created during those 2 or 3 days that we were together. However, the best part is the follow-up, and this is where the networking, the digital part comes in. So, sir, I will tell you, I've been retired. Well, I was effectively retired as of 1 January, but I have been out now for about 6 months. I still text each and every one of our community partners on major holidays, on whenever something good is happening, and we keep a group of those community partners that I used to work with, not because but it's because of the connection that we have built. So now it's not of a professional connection. Now it's more of a friend connection. I know when somebody's in the hospital, when somebody needs a prayer, when somebody does something, they'll send a text to the group. Hey, look, I just achieved this or achieved that. So the very first step was the personal touch, the personal meeting, and now we follow up. Obviously, I don't travel anywhere where they're at now, but we still keep in touch by text, by videos, by social media. So they both complement each other, and they're both important.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I always try to get recruiters to do is to build those connections and have what we call it a milk run, right? Where they go out and they have a habit of visiting the same people, each week or every other week. But you can do that digitally as well. And I think it's a really important concept for everyone to kind of understand, is the importance of not just making the connections, but maintaining the connections and having that follow up, because a lot of people don't do that. They kind of get overwhelmed with different stuff. They go by the wayside. But that's one of the things I've learned. I learned by watching you do that in recruiting. Like every time I came to you, like, hey, we have something to, with this state, or we have this idea, or even like, the Army wants us to do this pilot program. How can we start? you always knew where to go. And since I retired, now I see the same thing as I'm making connections, on LinkedIn or with other companies. It's all about networking and building those connections. So that's something that I think, like, obviously very important for recruiting, but man, so important in the corporate world as well.
Absolutely, sir. And net, I've often heard, and I don't know whose quote that is, but it says that your net worth is always contingent upon your network. And it's true. Networking is critical and essential, especially for recruiting. And I know that we are in a recruiting podcast, so I want to stress that for all of the recruiters and all of the military folks that may be listening, that networking and reaching out is probably the most critical aspect of their mission, and one of the most critical things that they're going to do in their careers while they're recruiting, because the human aspect will always be there, and there's always a need for uh, people have roles. Somebody might be an administrator, or somebody must be a superintendent, whatever it may be. But we're all humans at the end, and we all are looking for that personal touch. And a recruiter needs to have and understand that it's not just that first initial visit that actually starts the process, but it's the follow up. If you don't follow up, uh, everything will freeze and you will lose that person eventually. So everything is all about follow up. If you don't, you have to follow up, whether it's in person or whether it's online. And so whenever I provided training to recruiters when it came to the little slice of education, one of the things that I always emphasize was the follow-up aspect, and the fact to treat people like people and not as a contact, because
Yeah,
people will know that, and they will really differentiate if you are genuine or you just want something from them.
that's a great point. And and you mentioned, I love that quote. Your net worth is your network. I forget how you said that, but there's another quote from your book. Go ahead.
Yeah, is your net worth is contingent upon your network.
Got it. Got it.
If you have no network, what you're not going to be able to really do anything. It holds true all across, no matter what it is, whether it's education, recruiting, in corporate America. Everything moves by networks.
I'm adding that to my list of special quotes. I've got a book and I have all my quotes. I'm adding that one. And another quote that I have from your book, uh, when you talk about building your reputation, you mentioned, like, sometimes it's okay to send other people, but really it's still your responsibility, and you have to preserve your reputation. And you said reputation is the compound interest of networking, which I think is a really important thing to keep in mind, is preserving that reputation, so that yeah, you have networked, but people have to know that they can trust you, that you still have value. And you had an acronym that I thought was really important called VIP. Which, can you talk a little bit about that acronym and why that VIP is important and to maintain that reputation?
Absolutely, sir. And if you read the book, you will see that my book is filled with a lot of acronyms. In the military, as you know, acronyms are very important. Most of the conversations in any military talk is always compounded with some type of acronym. So I kind of build acronyms that people can relate to, and VIP is one of those. So I always say that reputation is the compound interest, like you were talking about, of networking. So the value of it means that you contribute before you ask. And this is what I was trying to express earlier. When you go to a school, again, recruiters, when you go to a school, it's so important to understand, first of all, the value that you bring to the table, but also to bring something of value to that organization. It's not just simply, hey, I'm here, I am the big man on campus, and you're going to give me what I want. It doesn't work that way, because then you put people off. So that is one of the things that I always emphasize on. Um, the other part of it is integrity. So uh, your word means something. I know that we are in a digital world, and things change, but your word is your word. If you are telling someone, again, recruiters, if you're telling someone, I'm going to be here on a certain day and on a certain time, make that word be your contract, so that when you feel that responsibility, they're going to know that you are a responsible person, that you're someone that they can count on. Because if you tell somebody something is going to happen, or you fail to do whatever it is that you have said that you would do, that integrity part falls apart, and you are going to lose that network as well. And then it goes right into what the presence is, which is being there for when you say you were going to be there. You have to be there consistently, and you have to be authentic. Uh, and people will see through your facade, if you will, if you're not authentic. If all you want to do is grab people to meet your quota, people are going to know that. They're going to know you're not authentic, and they're going to be very resistant to helping you. However, if you are genuinely trying to help the young men and women, and this is something, sir, that I will always tell all of the educators when I met them. So kind of take the guard off. And recruiters, this is something good to understand. And it's true today as it was 20 years or 22 years ago when I started supporting the Army in the education realm. If you were to put 100 students together, on a line, the military will probably be able to take, let's say, 30 of those, 30%, 3%, whatever it may be. So for the educator, it's important for them to know that you are there not because you want to, your primary mission is to recruit, of course, but you're there to help. And you want to help every single person, whether or not they can come into the military, whether or not they can serve. You are there to help them achieve greater academic success, to figure out what it is that they want to do in their academic careers, or even in their professional careers. So you're there to provide them another option, not just to get. But once you come across as a person that that you do what you say, you are there authentically, then you're going to start creating those connections, and the people that you actually connect with are not just going to become your colleagues, they're going to become your friends. So that is what
There's. So I apologize. I hit the button. I'm trying not to overwhelm my microphone with your speakers, so I'm going back and forth. But one of the things, Nelson, is that and this I have a lot of like books in my head that I just love. One of them is Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And every chapter of your book, as I'm reading it, I'm thinking there's so many parallels between that book and building relationships and your book, Bridge Builders, because and I took some notes here because you talked about the same things that Dale Carnegie mentions: being genuinely interested in other people, showing sincere appreciation, being a good listener. You talk about all those things. And then you also added something on top that Dale Carnegie doesn't talk about, and you talk about repetition, right? Can you talk a little bit about the repetition aspect of that, and why that's important to be consistent in building those relationships?
Sir, so the repetition matters to cement a relationship. So first of all, as I stated earlier, you have to appreciate the person that you are actually meeting. What are they doing, and how are they supporting their mission? So that to me is the first one. Listening is the other aspect of that. You have to listen to their needs so that you can then provide something that they may need as well. But the repetition comes when, so for example, if I go to wherever I go and I understand that there's a school that is in need uh, of materials, as an example, so it is just not enough for me to go meet that person, meet the principal, and say, "Hey, sir, ma'am, whatever," and they tell me what the need is. So the next time I follow up, I'm like, "Hey, how you doing? Everything is good," but I don't mention the need that they may have and how I may be able to help them. And then over time, that particular person is going to look somewhere else, because they may have a need that they may not be able to meet. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, as somebody that can provide that need or whatever it is that you were there for, because you did not bring it up in a repetitious form to them, to make them understand that, hey, I am working for you, I'm working with you, and I want to help you meet whatever goal it is that you need to meet. And so when people see that you are serious and that you are following up, in another word, in that you are saying, hey, this is what needs to happen, and this is how I'm helping you, then is you're going to lose that connection as well. And sir, if you remember, uh, when we did the educators tour and we took people from all over our area,
Yeah.
from 12 or 13 states, into a place that they had no idea, uh, it to do that, for me to take 8, 10 people from areas, first of all, people that never met me. So I had to, without even meeting them, I had to establish a relationship with them. I had to then be repetitive. I had to repeat myself in many ways to ensure that they understood what was going to happen and how it was going to happen, and that they could trust me. But if I only call them once and say, hey, you have been invited by the U.S. Army to do this and that, and they never heard from me again, until the end. By the time I call them again 6 months later, are you ready to go? They'll be like, who are you?
That's right.
And so that's where the repetition comes in. So I was very methodically and that's why we have calendars and reminders and all that. I was very repetition or cautious to be able to go back to them on a scheduled basis and say, hey, sir, ma'am, thank you so much. Look, this is where we're at in the process. This is the next step. And I did that on a weekly basis. I said, and I think I copy you on many of those emails. Hey, we have now gotten into our next step and blah, blah, blah. So that's the repetition. And once you do that, you establish a trust within each relationship. And that's why the Eagle Brigade, and I'm sorry, guys, whoever's listening, that's why the Eagle Brigade always soars so high. And sir, and that's why I use the eagle in my book, because we have to be like an eagle. We have to soar. We have to make sure that we are doing the right things right, so that we are able to soar like the eagle.
I love it. And that is true actually. For anyone listening, whenever we'd have these national ed tours, and each brigade would have so many slots, we were the only brigade that would just have extra slots because other brigades couldn't fill theirs, but Nelson had like 10 extra people ready to go in the waiting in the wings. So you always did a great job with that, my friend. No doubt about it. Now, another thing in your book, so you talk about different chapters. One is about when you're talking to leaders at a higher level, like state level, and then one is about you talk about educators and local level leaders. So, if I'm approaching that as a recruiter, what are the differences in approaching those levels of leaders, and what are the similarities? Should I approach them differently if I'm a recruiter out on the streets?
Sir, that's a great question. It is actually, part of the art of the military recruiting. I love it because I know that you actually address some of that in there. So the answer is yes. Uh, but the most important part, I will say, is that as a recruiter, and actually just as a recruiting station, company, battalion, however it is, you must know the mechanism wherever you're going to go, the hierarchy. In my instance, for example, and in the recruiter's instance, since they want to be in a high school or they want to be in a college, they have to understand what the hierarchy are. Just the same as the military. The military has a hierarchy. You just don't go to a general when a colonel could probably take care of something. So you have to understand the different types of nuances at different levels, and then approach it like that, so that you can be effective in your overall goal of whatever it is you're trying to achieve. So, for example, this is just an example for our brigade and our battalions. The differences were different, and even at the recruiting level, it was different. A recruiter was always when a recruiter goes to a school, they are probably making their connections more with the principal, the guidance counselors. They may see a superintendent, but the battalion are generally taking care of the superintendent and so on. So my mission was not just to ensure that we were able to talk to the lowest echelons and the middle echelons, but also to make the higher echelons, whether they were local legislators, state legislators, superintendents, or state superintendents, that many of them were, of what we could do on a larger scale. So everything is scaled depending on the type of place that you're in. So yes, the state level, the networking is very strategic and policy driven at the state level. So that is when we're trying to influence some type of policy to help the lower levels. But we are only going to know what the lower level needs from the interaction with those lower level influencers. So, for example, a local school board may benefit from a state level mandate that somebody is then carrying out, but they are understanding what that lower level echelon is talking about. So it is networking at every single echelon is important. You just have to be very understanding of the messages that you need to carry, which are not the same ones, but they all meet the same goal.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like the way you differentiated that. I mean, obviously, that work with the lower echelons and the local leader will feed up to those policy conversations you're going to have at the higher levels. Now, I was just taking my notes here. You know, you mentioned that you have acronyms, a lot of acronyms, which I thought was fabulous. That helped me kind of as I'm walking through. And I even took notes in the book, like this is for recruiters. They need to know this one. But the other thing that you did really well is that you had at the end of each chapter, you had actually, hey, here's some actions that you can take, like things that you can. Basically, you wrapped up it all the information. Said, here's the things you got to do, which I thought was very, very helpful as well. So if you're a recruiter, even if you don't read this entire book, you can just look at those things to do at the end of each chapter, and you're going to be successful. But one of the acronyms that I like too was you had one that was called ENTRY, ENTRY, and it was your strategy for ensuring that outreach is intentional, respectful, and value driven. And the reason I wanted to go back to this one is because you hit on it a little bit earlier, but I think sometimes our outreach can almost be not so much about how we can work with or help, but what we're going to get out of it. Right. I think it's a mistake that a lot of people, whether they be commanders or recruiters, I'm only calling when I need something. Right. So can you talk a little bit about the acronym ENTRY and talk about, being value driven and respectful, a little bit about that when we're building these relationships?
Absolutely, sir. And you are absolutely correct. Well, the biggest mistakes that I've seen made in recruiting from recruiters is just what you just mentioned. This is what I need, and I want it now. Not understanding that if years ago someone was able to sow the seed and let it grow, everybody will then be able to rake the fruit. So the ENTRY framework that is in the book is designed specifically to help those recruiters just focus and understand the process of actually engaging and getting a real good networking with someone. So the E stands for engage. So when you engage, you have to engage with purpose. It is not a halfway drill, meaning here's my card, I will talk to you later, and that's it, and then you don't forget. But you have to engage with purpose. Why are you there? Why are you engaging with this particular, whether it's a principal, a guidance counselor, or a superintendent? You have to know why you're there. What is your purpose for being there? So you have to be purposeful. You have to, as well, the N being navigate respectfully. If you go to a place and you're engaging with someone, and I just mentioned this a while ago, you have to understand the echelons of specific organizations. If you're in a school and you ask the guidance counselor for a specific thing, and you are really engaging with her, when you navigate that specific echelon, you just don't go straight to the superintendent and say, hey, I asked the school to give me this, and they have not responded, because then you have not given that chain of command really the ability to answer. And I found that many times, sir, when recruiters will call me from a specific state. We were based out of Huntsville, and they were, and sometimes I was supporting states that did not have an education service specialist. I will get a call from a recruiter and say, hey, I was talking to guidance counselor Nelson, and they promised me the school list, and now we don't have it. And now we went to somewhere, and we asked for it. So when I will go and investigate, first of all, the steps were wrong. They were not requesting the list from where they need to, but now they have really kind of killed their relationship with that guidance counselor, because they had thrown her under the bus and not giving her the ability to really say, hey, this is what you need to do. This is what the process that needs to happen. They just didn't get it. And so they, contacted the brigade commander, and then contacted the superintendent, and nobody really had a clear understanding. So that is the navigating respectfully. And then as well, you have to translate value. And we talk plenty about this. When you go to a place, specifically to a school, a college, or wherever you go, you have to bring value to whatever it is that you are going to be given, presenting to these people, to the educators in this instance. You just don't say, hey, I'm here, this is what I want. What are you bringing to the table? The quid pro quo, how am I going to help you? If you go to a school who are struggling academically, and they're at this school, well, we have a program, for example, that can help you and can help your students. Let me and let my team of recruiters go from class to class and present this program to those classes that are not doing well, and see how we do. That is a translating a value that you have, so that they can see that you're not just there to recruit. Oh, by the way, that's a byproduct if it happens. But if it doesn't happen, you're still there to help. And the remaining consistent part is the same thing. If you don't follow up with whatever it is that you promise, and if you're not consistent at it, if one day you say, I'll be here Thursday, and you're there Thursday, then you say, I'll be there Monday, but then you don't show up for 3 weeks, you are not remaining consistent. And this is where the networking with the whether it is by email, we have a lot of facilities now to ensure that we stay connected with people. It's not just not showing up, but also ensuring that if you're not able to make it, things happen, life happens. But make sure that if you have a meeting, you have something that you are letting that person know, hey, look, I'm sorry I can make it. This happened, but I will be there next Tuesday. And by God, you be there by next Tuesday. Or you send somebody in your stead to do whatever it is that you promise they will do. If you're not there and you're not doing those things, you're going to burn through your relationship. And the last one, of course, is the yield of results, which is everything that you are trying to accomplish once you go through those steps. If you do those steps, you will yield and you will get your whatever goals you're trying to achieve. But you have to be consistent, you have to do it, and you have to ensure that you're there to get all the stuff from those people. That connection really matters.
Yeah, and that's honestly, obviously very, very important for recruiters when they're working with educators. But everything you just talked about, I think that just has so many parallels with whatever industry someone may be in, whether they're working elsewhere in government or they're working in the corporate sector. So that's one of the ones I really, underlined and took notes on, because I think it's really important. And I'm going to share that in the future in some of my writings. Now, moving a little bit away from the education side, Nelson, is that you talked in your book about the importance of getting out in the community as well. And, having some engagements with those civic organizations like, Rotary and Kiwanis and Lions Club, those types of organizations. And I totally agree with you. I wrote a little bit about that in my book. And I always encouraged our young leaders, company commanders and below, go out to those organizations. You're meeting people. You might even have an opportunity to talk a little bit about the Army and what the Army has to offer, right? Build those allies in the community. Frankly, though, a lot of people didn't do it. It was actually rare that we had a station commander or a company commander that would take advantage of those opportunities. So I want to just kind of circle back to, you talk a little bit about the importance of that for our audience and why they need to be out there in those different organizations and making those connections in the community.
So, sir, and I know that you support all of the military services. So I will say this just to give somebody one of these organizations a pat in the back. So the National Guard, they do it right. And I will tell you what, I have been members of the Rotary, the Kiwanis, different organizations, because I understand that the grassroots starts there. You have leaders, you have people from the community, you have even parents that are involved in whatever organization's goals are. And most often than not, when I went to these organizations or these meetings, I saw a National Guard soldier, maybe not even in uniform, in a nice polo, U.S. Army. And the reason I know that they were National Guards because when I saw the U.S. Army, I'm like, oh, here's a recruiter. Let me go see where's he from, only to find out again that they were from the National Guard. So they are intentional in where they're at. But see, what happens, sir, in these meetings where all these civics organizations are, they are influencers of all types that reside even in the Rotary. You have the Rotary, for those of you that do not know, is actually divided into little segments, and they only accept members from those segments. And when they reach that number capacity, it's not that it's impossible to join the Rotary, but it's you have to work yourself in there. And all those segments are from different parts of society, whether it's criminal, the law, or sheriffs and all that, or government. They have politicians. They have all kinds of parents. They have all kinds of different segments that the Rotary has. So if you are going in there and sitting down and meeting the people, you will eventually get to a place where you are meeting all the influencers in that respective one. Kiwanis, sir, great place for the kids. There are just many different organizations that I think recruiters really miss the boat. It is very important to not miss the opportunity to build a trust right there at the grassroots level, because from there, one of the things that I have noticed is that sometimes you don't necessarily need to have a person in a specific place, as long as you know somebody that can point you to the right direction. And this is where these specific things happen. You may know a parent that is involved with whatever it may be, or a community leader that are going to these meetings that is involved with something, and from there they can direct you and actually help you get to wherever you needed to go. So these organizations are not to be missed, and they're very important, a very important part of the recruiting process, no matter which recruiting you're in.
Yeah, I think back to a previous recruiting assignment, and I joined the local Rotary Club, and lo and behold, not only was I meeting like different people in the community, there were 3 colleges in that town, and 2 out of the 3 college presidents or members. The third one was not the president, but it was like the director of student activities. I was able to make connections with all of them, particularly the director of student activities, and get our recruiters in front of the people on that campus, particularly the athletes, because we had a conversation, and I said, hey, a lot of athletes tend to kind of want to join the military. Can we come talk to them? Absolutely. Opened the door wide open for us. So it just shows you there are some indirect relationships, but you can have some direct benefits just from having those conversations, whether the club meets at lunch or breakfast or whatever. Oh, hold on a second. I'm so sorry. I mean,
Oh, no, that's fine. I was just going to talk directly to the recruiters. If you are not in one of these organizations, you are missing the boat, my friend. Get in there, network, and you will see things will happen for you immediately. Or maybe not immediately, but over time, as long as you're consistent and you are applying the concepts that we are outlining here.
no, absolutely, absolutely. And one of the other things that you talked about in your book was when you make people part of the team, right? So you've already talked about you kind of make their mission your mission. You find values and or how you can bring value to their mission. And for our audience, I'd like to share just a quick story about Nelson. Is that when we have these educator tours, and we would bring educators from all over the southeastern United States, Puerto Rico, everywhere. All right, so you have just a wide variety of people, and Nelson would immediately, he'd already kind of established a relationship with them, but once they got there, he would deem them as eaglets because we were the Eagle Brigade, and boy, they just took that and ran with it. And then at the end of the week or whenever the thing was up, you would say, okay, no, you are no longer eaglets. Now you're official members of the Eagle Brigade, and here's your Order of the Eagle certificate. And they absolutely loved it. I mean, they just adored being part of the team. So can you shed some light on the importance of building them as part of the team and how one might do that?
Absolutely, sir. That is, when you do something and you think about ways to make people feel included into something greater than themselves. In this case, many of us are sports fans. We watch a team and we root for them. We wear the t-shirts and a cap. And no matter what, if somebody talks bad about what is it, Auburn or Roll Tide, people, those are words that are going to be exchanged up in Alabama. I know that for a fact. So I kind of caught on to this, and I delved onto this very early in my career with the Army. I was in Tampa, and they are the Gators. So again, we did an ed tour one day, and I'm like, and I called them Gators, and they loved it. And so the idea was born then. And I knew back right then and there that people love to be included into something that is greater than themselves, a team. And so when I got to the brigade Huntsville, we were the Eagle Brigade. And I started learning a lot about the eagle. And obviously, the eaglet is a baby eaglet. So as I established a relationship with all of these community partners, even before I met them physically, it was all by telephone, emails, text, or whatever. But once they were there, I got them all into a group, and there were 5 brigades that went to this ed tour, and each brigade obviously has their own mascot name. And so I kind of made it a rivalry between us and the other brigades. Just and so you have no idea how people want to feel part of a team. And as soon as the first briefing that I gave them, I said, "Look, we are all part of the Eagle Brigade," and I will explain just a little bit of what the Eagle meant for us, and so on and so forth. But I said, right now, you are the Eaglets, and they loved it. They're like, "Oh, well, I'm an Eaglet. I'm an Eaglet." And so, unbeknownst to them, I had already spoken to all of the brigade commanders, and I said, "Hey, we need to make sure that we give them at least a recognition at the end of the tour, and we're going to say that they graduated into full-blown Eagles." And sir, there are people from 13 years ago. Most of them have retired by now, but I still keep in touch with them. That as soon as I call them or send them a text, the first thing they do is, "Hey, Eagle, how you doing?" Or they still feel part of the Eagle team. And my friends, that is something that you have to make sure to connect people with. Whatever team that you are on, make sure that they feel that they are part of your team. If somebody feels that they're part of your team, they are going to flip over 20,000 times because they are feeling included and they feel that they have a shared purpose. And our purpose, of course, was recruiting. And I would tell you that I can go back to any one of those other community partners that have attended those ed tours, and there is probably nothing within the realm of education, things that are within their grasp, that I can ask them even today, and they will be able to help out the recruiting effort because they feel that they were part of a team. And that, my friend, is something that needs to be happening with every single person that you meet. Bring them into your team.
Well, you obviously were a master at that, and I hope they do take your advice and do that and make them part of the team. It makes a huge difference. Now let's shift gears a little bit because we got a few minutes left. I want to talk about the importance of using social media and emails. Now, I mentioned this because I think it's important for recruiters. I've seen some use these methods and do it poorly. And honestly, when they did it poorly, it actually hurt their efforts because they weren't doing a good job at it. So how can one successfully use email and social media and the recruiting efforts? And then are they all the same? If you want to talk a little bit about the different social media platforms and how they're used, that might be helpful.
Absolutely, sir. So social media and email should only be used to extend a relationship. It does not replace the actual relationship. Uh, when you are emailing or using social media, you have to be respectful and you have to be clear in whatever it is that you're trying to portray to the person whom you're emailing. Do not spam. Do not over automate and make everything about yourself. It is all about tone, the timing, and the relevance that matters, and not it is not the volume of the stuff that you send. And just I know that we're running out of time, so I'll be very brief. Whenever I was emailing all these high level, we have taken local legislators, state legislators to the ed tour, state superintendents, high level people that are very busy. So I was very conscientious that the only information that I was going to send them via email was going to be something relevant and important that they needed to action immediately. If it was something that could wait or that I could talk to them about at a different date, then I would do that. Only relevant information. And to answer the social platforms, they are not all the same. I did not use a lot of personal social media when I was serving the army, only because I wanted to ensure that there was nothing that I put that would be negative to the mission. Not that I did, whether it was no, I'm not at all into that. But what I have been finding out with social media is that not all social medias are made the same. So you have to understand the algorithm of the media, but most importantly, who are the people that are going to that social media. And I give you a couple of examples. Facebook, as an example, it is made up of mostly a lot of families, a lot of people that are there to share experiences, to get some information. So you don't want to over spam with a lot of information that may not be relevant to what is in Facebook. And Facebook moves very slowly versus, for example, TikTok, where you are able, and I understand recruiters that TikTok may not still be authorized, but I'm just talking about the different algorithms of the different types of social media. Instagram, for example, is kind of similar to TikTok in that you're able to share a little bit more because the people that are there are younger, where on Facebook they may be a little older. So you have to understand the types of people that are in each of those social media so that you can target a message specifically for them. On LinkedIn, you want to be very professional in how you answer and you post things in there, because on LinkedIn, for example, is a professional platform where people are trying to network and actually LinkedIn will be a perfect platform for recruiters to set up an account and be able to say, hey, I'm looking for people and this is what we have. Sir, and this is something for the recruiters. I don't really see a lot of that happening from individual recruiters where they say, hey, I'm a recruiter. When you're on LinkedIn, you see a whole lot of recruiters from corporations and corporate looking for people, but I don't really see the message out from the Army or the Navy or the Air Force that says this is what we're recruiting for soldiers or airmen or sailors, whatever it may be. So it's a good pointer to figure out what the social media is used for, and then target and tailor your message to that specific social media.
No, those are great points, and you're right. Understanding the audience and who's on there. I saw that in recruiting a little bit. I had a professional account for what was in Twitter, now X, one for Instagram, and I used them a little bit differently. I would use X to communicate with like community influencers and those types of people. I would use Instagram because that's how I communicated with a lot of recruiters. I could post something about somebody getting an award or a recruiter that did something great. And I knew that we'd have a large number of recruiters that would see that and recognize it. So you're right. I think that's a critical thing to understand is who's the audience. And LinkedIn's that's some good advice. I don't see that either. But one more question before we hang it up. One of the things I admired about you, Nelson, is that you were always so busy all over the place, right? We had the entire southeastern United States, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. And we had some great people on our staff, but you were the only one that was literally all over the place all the time, making all these contacts. And as you previously mentioned on this podcast, you still keep in contact with a lot of those people, probably hundreds. How did you keep all those, all that information sorted out? And how can a recruiter, as they're building these contacts, how can they remain organized and so they know who these people are? Any tidbits on that might be helpful for them?
Well, sir, organization is the best thing out there, and there are many different types of software. Obviously, CRM is a great database that you can use to ensure that and I know that perhaps there's not a CRM per se in the military or in the recruiting that is such as like that, but I'm sure that there are systems that can be used. I used a very basic type of CRM, Nelson Castillo's CRM. I built a spreadsheet, and everybody that I met by state, I will put them there, and then I will put notes next to them as I build that spreadsheet. So, for example, James Welch, brigade commander, and then I will put a note. I met it 1 January, follow up 30 January with an answer for whatever it was. So at that point, what I would do is every day I would look and see what I had kind of coming up, and then I also used my reminders on emails for very important stuff. And between those two, I had a reminder on my email once a month to say, "Hey, check your spreadsheet," and I will open it up. I will look, and oh, wait a minute, I forgot. I gotta get back to James Welch next week, so let me get this answer for him real quick. Boom, 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 boom. And then once I did that, it helped me stay straight into figuring out what I needed to do. It sounds a little time consuming, but it really is not. If you put everything in a list, however you want, and you put reminders, the reminders to me are a lifesaver because they come up 2 days earlier. I need this to be delivered by such and such a date. I already know, boom, 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 and it gets done. And it's done. And then I just add my notes on my spreadsheet, which is the same thing as the CRM that many industries using. And it just reminds you. It's just that CRM is all included. I did it basically on my own, but that's how I stayed on track to make sure that everything, all my do-outs and everything, all the networking, all the reach out was being done in a timely manner.
Yeah, it's incredibly important. And, I found, even for me, it was very challenging as a brigade commander to keep up with all those different people. So I was very thankful that I had people like you on our staff to help me keep everything straight. But hey, as we wrap up everything, Nelson, is there, if you had to kind of give one piece of advice to all the recruiters who are out there, or even salespeople who are listening to this, what might you tell them so they can be successful in their sales or recruiting mission?
Well, sir, look, my closing comments to the recruiting force is the networking is not who you know, it's about how you serve. All the recruiters serve, so it is about how you serve. You have to build bridges before you need to cross them. That is the biggest thing. If you don't have the bridge, you can't cross that bridge. You have to show up with integrity, curiosity, and purpose, and your reputation will open doors long after introductions are forgotten. That has been for me the most important aspect of networking and staying in touch. Integrity, the value that you bring, and the bridges that you build, and those bridges will help you build many other bridges all across.
I love it. That's it. And I love that quote. I've added this to my quote book too. You have to build bridges before you cross them. That's a great one. Well, hey, as you wrap up, my friends, first of all, thank you so much for taking time out to be with me today. And more than that, thank you for your 32 years of service and all that you have done for our Army and our nation. I was so thankful to have you as a teammate. I'm even more grateful to have you as a friend. And so thank you for taking time out. And for our audience, you've got to get this book, Bridge Builders. Okay. That's secondary. The art of military recruiting is secondary, but this one, you got to get it immediately. It will help you, no doubt about it. And like I said, I've already taken notes from this book and applied it to my current business, the Recruiting Solutions, because it is that valuable. So thank you, Nelson. Get this book, everybody. And for our audience, thank you again for taking time out to join us on the Recruiting Solution podcast. If your team is ready for sales or recruiting training or consulting, reach out to us. You can go to recruitingsolutionsllc.com. That's recruitingsolutionsllc.com. Or you can send me a DM on LinkedIn. I'm James Welch, again, the founder and CEO of Recruiting Solutions. But I thank you again, Nelson, and thank you all for joining us. Here's to less stress and more success on the recruiting battlefield. James Welch out.